remember going out to UFC one night, they're ordering drinks and pitchers and I'm drinking, soda.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, by the second pitcher, I already realized it's like, oh my gosh, I can't connect to these guys.
All right, Dai. Hey, welcome to the business line, bud. How are you doing today?
Yeah, feeling great, man. It's Friday and just got back from a few hours of coaching and I'm like, just feel all amped up. I feel great. This is like
awesome,
just
man.
a perfect next step.
Where are you joining us from today? Where are you?
I'm based in Vancouver, Canada.
You're in BC.
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool. So it's in college, I had my roommate who at the time we were really good friends. He was from Chilliwack, right outside of Vancouver.
The whack, we call it. Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah. We actually took on a fall break. We drove to Edmonton because we had a guy on a baseball team in college who was homesick. He was a freshman. We drove him to Edmonton, and like a day and a half, it felt like. It was crazy. And a Nissan Altima, like 5 people in a Nissan Altima. Wow. And then we went to the mall there, that huge mall in Edmonton. I can't remember what it's called.
West Edmonton Mall.
Yeah. And it's giant. And then we drove all the way across Canada through the Rockies to Chilliwack nonstop, spent a day there, and then drove home through the U.S. It was nuts.
No way. That's a road trip and a half, man. That's a lot of miles in a couple of days.
So what's the weather like in Vancouver today?
Today it's just gray. It's dry though, but it's gray.
Yeah, that's good.
And so it's I don't mind it. I mean, I tell everybody if you want to live in the Pacific Northwest, you gotta be okay with the rain and the gray.
Yeah.
So it's
well, I'm in Wisconsin, so we got the sun for yesterday, but it's back to gray and snowing this morning. And anyway, that's okay.
It's Friday. It's all good.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself, Dai. One of the things I just Tell me about what you're doing now, but I'm super interested in how you got to what you're doing now, and let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, anybody can probably attest to this. I mean, our lives are sort of like that ongoing hero's journey, right? We're constantly seeking to improve ourselves, and whether we, pay attention to that little feeling in us, it's like, hey, can I be doing a bit more? Can I be a bit better? Can I be greater today than I was yesterday? And I think everybody has sort of that inkling in them, but entrepreneurs have it in a big way, and they actually look at their businesses as that extension of their person. And at least that's how I've always sort of approached it. And it's been nothing anywhere close to a straight line, my journey. Okay. And most people probably can attest it's similar. I didn't naturally come to entrepreneurship, even though I sort of observed it through my parents growing up, especially my mom. She always had a side hustle, always. Government gig, but side hustle on the weekends, right? So got to watch that, grew up with that. And then my dad was very entrepreneurial, but as a professional, as a veterinary, like an animal doctor, right? Okay, so it was interesting having these sort of duality in my home. And, then fast forward a number of years, I just got into the fitness thing because I went through a huge transformation going from obese teenager to a really healthy and fit human being. And that 2-year process really solidified my passion for helping others with transformations as well. And, I've done that lots of different ways with multiple businesses over the last 30 years, but I'm just a dude from Vancouver dating his wife for 23 years. And I got 2 daughters. They're 19 and 21 now. And I mean, that's really, I don't really have any titles, but those would be the ones that I actually care about, Yeah,
absolutely. Dad, husband.
Yeah.
Hey, so let's dig in. So you said as a teen, you're struggling with some obesity.
Yeah.
What was the tipping point? What got you to click? Was it an issue? Was it a scare? Was it, I'm sick of this, I want to do better? What happened?
Yeah, it's a bit of all that, to be honest. It was a period of about 5 years to get to that breaking point, if you will. And, from about age 9, 10, my parents went through a separation, then a divorce. And it was just, my brother and I had a lot of autonomy. I'm a kid of the 80s, totally dating myself.
Yeah, we all did.
Right
we had
now.
some freedom.
Dude,
right?
We had a lot, right?
I miss it.
Gosh,
it was crazy. Go back.
Man, I know, and I really enjoyed the 80s, but also because, video game consoles were all over the place. I remember, I played a lot of video games, watched movies, and ate a lot of unhealthy food. So, compound that over 5 years. I mean, it's not rocket science to figure out that I was definitely putting a lot more calories in than I needed and wasn't burning any off. And so eventually got to this place of being very overweight. But it's because I was eating my emotions, my psychology. It just gave me this instant relief, got to go to my little happy place and ignore the challenges around me. And, my parents did the best they could with what they had back then, but there's still a lot of stigmatization around divorce. Not like today. We have these statistics that are rather scary today around, divorce. And
you can see the long-term effects of what started happening back there when it just became so prevalent, right?
I agree. And so it was just weird because it didn't really have any of that emotional or psychological support. So, you're sort of left to your own volitions and you just do what you do. And
I was there too when I was about 9 or 10. Fourth grade, I was 5'2" and 134 pounds.
Yeah.
I was a big kid. Yeah. I was chunky. I was hefty, as they might have said back then. But I would come home from school. I'd turn on the cartoons and I'd grab a can of SpaghettiOs, pop them open, and I wouldn't even warm them up. I just boom, boom, boom. And if there was enough adrenaline behind what I was doing or watching, I'd go another one. I might have 2 cans of SpaghettiOs just as a snack when I get home. That's like maybe 500 or 600 calories or more.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I could burn it. I was active, but it was just, and then I'd have 2 giant hamburgers for dinner. And I'd wake up and have sausage bread. And I was from Texas at the time. I lived in Texas, sausage bread and butter and maybe some eggs. So it just kept pounding. But
you did say about the activity piece, right? If you were active, I
played baseball and stuff like that. Yeah. But the weight, that weight on that frame, I started to have heel problems. I had to have inserts because I was running and like my Achilles tendon started to separate from my heels. But it got better. Lifestyle changes is funny because at the time I was a foster kid, but I had great family that way. But I had to go back and live with my mom. Totally different situation. I didn't have access to all that food and stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to stick around the house. I was outside more because if I stuck around the house, I was doing chores. But I got more active, ate less, lost all that weight. And at the time I was like bummer as a kid. I wanted the other feedback, but it was really better for me. It was way better for me.
And it's kind of cool too, to take note of just sort of what you were experiencing there. Because going outside and just being active, it actually is very enjoyable. There's a lot of, now science has caught up to tell us that there's 101 benefits to doing that. But I think if you just listen to your own gut and your instincts, like we tend to feel better, after being active outdoors. It doesn't matter going for a brisk walk, going for a run, going for a bike ride, like hanging out with friends at the park. Like it's amazing how it can be very cathartic, but at the same time, very healthy in a lot of different ways. So, the fact that you had that intuition back then is great. I didn't have that.
I don't even know if it was intuition. It was forced upon me.
Well, yeah, but you still went along with it. And I think that's a good thing, man. So
hindsight, I'm thinking, hey, that worked out.
Yeah,
but
totally did.
There was more struggles for me. So for you switched, started getting healthier. What were you doing in those teenage years and into your young adult to kind of like change that?
Well, it started with me just, getting to a place where I was actually more fearful of the future that was staring me in the face based on my habits at the time. And I explain it like I just was looking at myself in the mirror one day after getting out of the shower, and it was just like instant shock. It was the first time I really acknowledged my physique at that point at 15. And I broke down in this very cathartic, ugly sob, it was very, I got a lot of release from that emotion because obviously I was building a lot. And, but I came out of the bathroom with this desire to not be like that anymore. And I just knew I had to move away from where I was. And what I mean by that was just start doing things I wasn't doing. And the things that I was doing, I just acknowledged that I should probably stop doing that as much. Yeah. Like eating the certain foods and just not moving my body, playing video games all day and watching movies, I said, I got to start moving and I got to just eat differently. Now I had zero knowledge or understanding what that meant, but this is all, my kids, they always laugh because I'm like, I went to the library, got books out on fitness and nutrition. I'm at age 15. I'm just driving.
It's the equivalent of Googling it now, right? Or looking up a YouTube video. Why don't you just
Google it, Dad? I'm like, I'm older than Google. You guys have no idea what the world is like, And it was good though, because I educated myself and that gave me clarity, but it also started to give me a bit of confidence on what to start doing. And I just started biking every day, started changing how I ate. Within about a month, I started to experience what I felt was a really positive win. There was a big hill that I would be on my bike ride. And the first couple of weeks, I'd have to walk the bike up the hill.
Yeah.
But it was about a month in, I'm like attacking that hill, and I got all the way to the top without getting off the bike. And that's where it really clicked for me that, my goodness, changes are happening. And that got me more excited. And, 20 months later, I released the weight, really established some new health routines. I started doing strength training, a bit of cardio, but I really loved the weights.
Did you kind of change who you were surrounding yourself with, purposefully or on accident, or?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times when people around us that we align ourselves with, naturally or organically, they start to see a change in us, and it's like the blue crab's trying to pull us back down into the bucket.
Yeah.
No, you're not getting free. Get back down here and eat some cheese poofs. How about a 2 liter of Dr. Pepper? You want some, right? There's some of that. Did you just kind of have to remove yourself and just?
For me, it wasn't so much the friend groups that I had, because I didn't really have a lot of tight social connections. I had a few friends that I knew from when I was younger to older, but it became more pronounced, and really I was more aware of just social influence when I moved out west from Ontario. So I grew up just outside of Toronto in Ontario, and hit 18, graduated high school. I was like, I'm moving west. Just like the song says, go west, young man. And I went west, and, and I never looked back, but it was also this idea that I could sort of start fresh. And that really excited me, because I also grew up in a small town, and, like people said, well, what kept you motivated to keep going? And I was like, well, to be perfectly honest, I wanted a girlfriend. I did. I wanted somebody to want me. That's a huge motivating
factor.
Yeah.
But here's what I love to hear. What I love about your story so far is what I'm hearing is, and this doesn't happen and sometimes it's by accident, but most of the time it doesn't happen this way. Most of the time we turn in, you have that sobbing moment, and you find someone or something to blame. Yes. And you just keep leaning on that, as opposed to taking responsibility and owning it, because at that point you keep control of doing something about it, right? As
Correct.
Opposed to, it's not my fault. It's the divorce. It's my mom's fault, or it's my dad's fault, or it's never sunny outside and it's always cold. So that's why I don't go outside, right? Then you lose all control to do anything about it, right? So that's what I think is really fascinating about your story, is that you got to that point and you said, nope, I'm going to get after it. And you did.
I did. And it took time. But it took me 5 years to put it on. So really taking 20 months to take it off didn't seem that bad. Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and it didn't matter, because I just kept experiencing these little wins, because I also kickstarted my puberty. I was very late to puberty because it had been heavily retarded based on
absolutely. Yeah.
My lack of activity. Yeah. So I was late to mature, but as soon as I started taking care of my health, all of a sudden testosterone kicks in. I grew about 7 inches over a span of that 20 months as well. Hey. And so everything ended up working in my favor. But had I not made that change when I did, who knows what would have happened by the time I was 20, And, I still like to think that I would have made some changes, but I was so focused on the exterior. And I think that's the thing, when you're younger, it's all about perception and how people perceive us. And I mean, today I look at what my kids have had to endure with just social media and that influence. I mean, we are influenced all the time, but the amount of information that's coming at us nowadays, and these images that are coming at us, and these subconscious sort of underpinnings of some of the marketing channels, it's harder for kids today, where I think back then I was fortunate that I didn't have to deal with a lot of that additional pressure. It was hard enough, and,
absolutely.
To be perfectly transparent, around 18, I really started drinking though, because I had done all this external changing.
And you're in Canada and you can.
Well, you can, at 19 or 18, depending on the province. When
I was that age, I was trying to go into Canada, so I know could.
You probably,
and I did.
I hear that a lot from my American buddies, and fair enough. But the thing was, for me, it was also because I needed a crutch, man. I was feeling so low about myself still. I realized I still had the mentality of that obese kid. I was still sort of constantly looking at people in fear of judgment, comparing myself to others, feeling like an imposter. Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand how to frame it now, but back then I was really shy and introverted. And I discovered later on in my later years of high school, even though I made these physical changes, started getting invited out by different social groups, I still felt myself not engaging or interacting. But then I was introduced to alcohol, and I was like, whoa.
There goes those disinhibitors, right?
Completely. And then I started to get engagement from all these people. I started dating some girls. I was hanging out with what I believed were the cool guys,
Yep.
And And the thing is that I believe deep down that they preferred hanging out with the guy that was the drinking version of me than the regular version. And I was looking to prove that every chance I got. And in proving that, I really started to solidify this belief that, to really get to know people and connect with them, I'm going to have to be drinking.
Yep. And
that perpetuated a 15-year journey. Even when I was scaling my last business, with a business partner, we did that for 17 years, but a good chunk of those years, I'm raising a small family, we started having kids younger and, have this company and it's growing. And on top of that, trying to manage my own health and my own sort of physical health. And on top of that, I'm like the weekend warrior or, every opportunity to have a drink with somebody, I would take it. It was a pretty hard.
Been there,
15
done that
years.
As well, for sure. For sure. I think so many of us go through that. Like,
yeah.
It's funny, like early 2000s, I met at the time a best friend, and it's funny, it was around playing video games online. I was just short out of college. I was working for the school in fundraising, and then, we met and kind of were fast friends. We had lunch. He was starting up a computer business here in Wisconsin, and we got to be really good friends. And my career was in nonprofit administration and fundraising and stuff, and that was starting to go in a good direction. And then all of a sudden it hit a wall. And I really started to question what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go that direction anymore. And he was there and gave me an opportunity to come into his company and help him at a sales capacity. And I still feel blessed to have that opportunity. But a lot of our friendship and a lot of what we had built together was around those same kind of principles. I think we knew and trusted each other pretty well, but at the same time, it was always around a party. It was always around those personalities that came out, they're inside of us, but to come out when you start drinking or something. And it eventually caught up to both of us. Right. And we're not that close anymore at all, honestly, because things happen and you lose trust, and you gotta one person, like, so for me, and I chose my family, I chose that direction, and more of kind of, I can't really speak for him anymore. I don't think he's, inherently a bad person, but he chose kind of this different direction, and his vector, I think he's doing all right. And I'm, blessed and highly favored, too. But getting down to the root of depending on, things like alcohol to carry you through, and those things. So what happened is it just started kind of build to where you, and all of a sudden the dam broke, or what?
Pretty much, yeah. And my kids were about 4 and 6 at the time. I had just turned 32. And, our company, it was pretty close to a best year. I think we almost did $8 million in retail revenue that year. It was a good year, professionally speaking, and things were just rocking and rolling. And meanwhile, I had maintained this sort of, I work really hard, but man, I could party harder, and until it got to a place where I was quite literally out of control, for lack of a better term, because the drinking version of me was just becoming the dominant personality. And kids, especially at that age, are sponges. They just absorb things. They observe things. And my wife got to a breaking point where, one night, I didn't come home until the wee hours, and even then woke up on the floor beside the bed the next morning, not even remembering how I got there. And, we had a very serious heart to heart, where she was now discussing with me what life was going to be like to co-parent our kids separately. And she was very decided on that fact that, this is not the environment to raise our kids in anymore. So something has to change. And if that means you moving out, so be it. And, we both were shedding tears because neither of us really wanted that. Right. Kids are in the other room watching like Dora the Explorer, right? And all I can hear is backpack. Anyways.
Now it's Bluey with my kids.
Oh, is it Bluey?
Oh, man. Bluey's pretty sweet, though. Bluey's a neat show. I like Bluey.
I miss
each
Bluey's.
One of their little kids is one of my kids.
Oh, is it?
Golly. Like, there's like the cousin named Muffin. She's super naughty. That's my 5-year-old girl, and I love her to death for it. But like, oh man, like if anybody's watching, they know about Muffin. Muffin's a crazy person. but that's Miami. But anyway, sorry.
So good. I miss that one. Obviously came after the fact for us, so it was.
Your kiddos are old. I've got a 12, a 10, a 5, and a 2-year-old.
Oh my goodness, man! The whole spectrum.
I'm 44.
There.
We waited a little bit.
Yeah.
Because like we're talking about those years, like where our priorities were us. Like if we don't have fun now, we're gonna miss out. And there's things I would do different going back. But anyway.
And to be fair, like we'll get to it in a sec, but I mean, we were sort of the same way, with our kids when they were young, but it also, we came to a point where we decided to pull the kids out of school, give away our stuff and go traveling for 5 years as a family.
Cool. Yeah.
And we'll chat a bit about that, but that happened later after the transformation of giving up alcohol, like it got to a point, so here I am staring down at my wife at the end of the table and we're talking about what it's going to be like to have to divorce and how we're going to raise our kids together. And I didn't want it. She didn't want it. We were exchanging tears. And she asked me a question. And this is a question that has been my guiding principle for almost the last 15 years, is just constantly asking myself this question. Because it's amazing. When you get a good question, it can really bring out of us the right question can produce the right sort of introspection.
Absolutely. Questions are huge.
And it is. It's really. And so she asked me, she goes, Dai, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? And it was like instant. I felt like, I sort of got kicked between the legs and punched, in the nose at the same time. And I was just like gutted. And I was just, because the first time, also being someone that worked in sales and was very good at dealing with challenging conversations at times, I sort of prided myself on being able to talk myself out of anything. Right. And yet
you're like,
I had nothing. Because there was nothing to justify at that point. I knew she was right. And it was actually just in that moment, right? Just sort of like that day when I was 15, sobbing my eyes out, looking at my reflection in the mirror, thinking, what the hell happened to me? Here I was, my wife's eyes were basically that mirror now, and she sees something in me that I can't see in myself, but she believes in me. And I made a commitment to her and my daughters right then and there. I'd go 1 year without drinking. Now, I know there's a lot of people who think, well, Dad, it sounds like you might have been an alcoholic. It might have been something out of your control. I was never out of control. I knew I'm someone that prides himself on knowing my choices and also knowing the actions I do. I own everything I do. It's all good.
Yep.
I was there. I hit mute on the phone. I turned it off. Oh, sorry, babe. I didn't even know what time it was. Oh, my battery died. I mean, geez. I was conscious of all those silly decisions I was making. And so after that, I made a commitment to a year, and within about 6 weeks, I realized how hard that commitment was. And because you brought it up earlier, that idea of that social pressure or those influences that are our closest connections. And all my closest connections, especially the males that I associated with, I mean, vulnerability wasn't ever practiced. I mean, it was always surface-based conversations or business-based conversations. Or bagging about our relationships. That was like the extent of it. And we'd always have alcohol around that. So, within 6 weeks, I was like, who's my friends? Because they stopped calling me and I stopped calling them because it was weird. I remember going out to UFC one night, where they're ordering drinks and pitchers and I'm drinking, soda. And, by the second pitcher, I already realized it was like, oh my gosh, I can't connect to these guys.
Yep.
And I remember literally dumping on my wife one night, like verbal diarrhea, just blah, 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 blah. It was the first time, like, she just said, what's going on with you? Like, what's happening on the inside? And she could tell I was hurting.
Yeah.
And we'd been together almost a decade at that point, and I'd never really been openly honest with her, like, to the full extent. And
it's hard to do.
Yeah. And like, she didn't even know about my past being an overweight kid. Like, I just, like, that's how, I really kept it close. Like, now I don't care. I share this story, but back then I still harbored a lot of shame of it, especially being someone that worked in the fitness space. I believe that it would actually tarnish.
As opposed to edify your results, show the fruit,
But that's just where I was. And that's where my mindset was, my ego was. And it was just weird, but I felt this feeling in me that I got to tell her everything and really explain how I'm feeling, at least try. I don't really know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to try. And it was just, I just poured everything out. And
isn't that such a cool feeling? Like, I've had situations with my wife. We've been together going on 20, actually we've been together longer than 20 years, but married for almost 20 years.
That's amazing.
And how much as a guy, as a dude, like, we hide, about ourselves and about our thoughts and what we're going through. And when sometimes it's because something happens and you just can't avoid it. You're like, oh crap, she's gonna hate me now, right? And then when you can just let that out to that person who nobody, alive and breathing cares, as maybe if you still get your mom or something like that, your dad, but nobody cares for you as much as that person, because they know your garbage and baggage. And when you could just kind of release that, and all of a sudden, because you build up, they're going to judge me, all these things are going to, now they're not going to respect me anymore. But all of a sudden it's like the opposite of that. There's more love, there's more grace, there's less judgment. It's really cool.
I love that you're saying all that, because I needed to discover that myself by actually going through the action and just trusting that something good would happen from this cathartic release and being this open with my wife. And I remember she let me go. It must have been about 40 minutes, but she was a very generous listener. She would hold my hand, touch my thigh, like eye contact, just messaging, saying like, it's going to be okay. I love you. Yeah. So I felt really safe, heard, and seen.
Yeah.
And I was also opening up emotionally, which I'd never done before. Because, I think back to my dad. I mean, I remember him telling stories. Like, he remembered his parents telling him, I love you, like twice. And it's like, 70 plus years of his life, on this planet, only being told that a couple times. And so he was very stoic in nature, but also non-emotive, right? And so, I can count on one hand how many times my dad said he loves me, and and so again, he was just modeling and repeating what he grew up in. And so I don't begrudge him for that at all. But here I was, telling this to my wife, and she just, at the end of it, I'm just there and I'm like pretty tired, like it is exhausting, right? Just getting completely transparent with people. And she looked at me and she said, thank you. I love you. It's going to be okay. And I think you should talk to somebody.
Okay, I just did.
That was exactly my response. Exactly. I was like, what do you mean? I just talked to you. And she was right. But I had a huge stigma against mental health professionals back then. Again, I'm 47 now, so this is 15 years ago. Because also the people I associated with, if it was ever brought up that you saw a therapist or that or something like that, it was
you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Fork in him.
Exactly. Yeah. But yet I went out, found a psychologist, worked with him for about 5 months. We went to a relationships counselor for all those that are, couples out there that cool. We started, but first session in, she's looking across at us on the couch and she's like, hey, Christy, I think it's going to be better if Dai comes back for a few sessions by himself. And so it was like, we going in together, but I got to go back on my own. So, but that's okay. I fully, just like when I was 15, I committed to getting healthy. I was just like, I'm going all in. I'm going to do the things that they say you should do. And I bet you it's going to produce different results than I'm getting playing video games, watching movies, and eating the food. I was like, it can't lose on this one because it's completely different. It's taking me a different direction. So I trust that it's going to work. And sure enough, within that first month, like I told you, I was experiencing wins, which just confirmed the hope and belief that I had. And so the same thing here, giving up the alcohol, I was like, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to do the inner work that everyone's talking about. I want to, focus on me inside. And, within about 6 months, it felt like a veil had been lifted. It's the only way I can really describe it. Like I just stopped thinking about alcohol. It wasn't even a thought anymore, but I was starting to learn how to connect with people without it. And I also changed all my association, all of it, like all of it. Like I couldn't change the people around me. So I just changed the people around me, and it was just,
how does that say? Yeah, that's a good one. I think I saw that somewhere from you.
It was on my,
one of the ones that I heard years ago was, we're the average of, you take the 5 people you spend most of your time with, that your income's going to be the average, your lifestyle is going to be the average, the way you think. It's true. Right. So you want to make some changes, you got to make some changes.
So true. And so I did. And everything really just got better, like for lack of better way to describe it, but it just did everything. And I think largely because my internal perspective of myself started to change, and that started to change how I saw the world as well. And I just felt myself having this deep desire to want to impact people in a greater way. And that's where I really started to get online and doing a lot more social online content to support people with change and health and fitness and nutrition, and just really to help them with the mindset of change. Yeah. But at the same time, we were still building my previous retail business with a business partner. And so I just did everything on this social media side of things just for fun.
Yeah.
Because it made me feel good.
Right.
But sure enough, a few years later, I've got a friend of mine that's into the social media marketing space and all that. He's like, and let's look at my website analytics and look at my socials. And he's like, dude, you can make money doing this stuff. And I'm like, what? You get money for this? Like posting content, you get paid for this stuff? And he's like, yeah. You should really look into it. And then, anyway, so I started to treat it a bit more seriously, but my brand outgrew the corporate brand that I was building with a business partner and a whole team of people, employees. Had about 100 people at that time. And there were some little rumblings going on inside the organization. People were feeling very threatened by what I was doing outside of work. And writing was on the wall. I knew that I wasn't feeling fulfilled there and I wanted to make some changes. So I ultimately left after 17 years and started doing what I'm doing now,
Yeah. And that leads me to a really good question because I hope our audience sees this in you too, because this is what I saw when, a couple weeks back when we kind of connected and we're going to get together and do this show. I can't spend too much time doing it, but I try to learn as much about folks as I can before I talk to them, so I have an idea what it's going to be like, right? And I genuinely got the impression that this guy seems like A, he's got fruit on the tree. He knows what he's talking about because he's doing it and he is it. B, seems super humble, seems relatable. When I hear him talk, even whether it's to a person one-on-one on a podcast or to a group, I don't get the I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid vibe. So. And because that's something, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're just trying to build a small traditional type business, you're running to that a lot. And I was talking to Matt about this today, prepping for the show. I was like, I really want to dig in to you, Dai, and find out, how do you balance being the brand and not getting drunk off the Kool-Aid of the brand of you, right? Because it's you. Because I've seen so many folks just fall into this narcissism path.
Yes.
And it's so sad. And it's like, golly, man, how do you do it?
Well, that's a really good question. And there was some intentionality. I think it's because when I started on social, there was never any business plan with that. You know what I mean? Like, I was doing it sheerly because it made me feel good. I had gone through that big change myself. So I felt this need to want to help others. So
a positive feedback loop, a little bit of good positive dopamine from doing something that feels good. Right?
Oh, totally. And it did. It made me feel amazing. And it also, we started to build community, connecting with others that wanted to experience a little bit of what I had already experienced, just like a hero's journey. I went through some changes. There were some important people that helped me along the way. You get to the top of that mountain, you turn back to say, holy crap, I made it all the way up. That's pretty good. But inevitably you see people down there at the bottom struggling to get started. And I felt like I had to go down and help them, and so there was always this desire to help others first, because selfishly it made me feel great. and my wife also shares that she's always been that way to a fault, to be quite honest. I'm like, I bug her sometimes. I'm like, man, you got to save some for yourself too, babe, and she gets that now. But in the early days when we first started, it was all about everybody else. She always put herself last, the cliche we hear, right, all the time. And, but long and short of it, when I started into this, there was always a filter through which I passed any content that I'd put out to the world. And this reflects even in my business today, is like, if the content's not going to inspire, educate, and motivate, and if I can't do it at least in a fun way that is somewhat entertaining or in an introspective way, why am I putting the content out there?
Right. Yeah.
And that's just the questions that I ask myself every time before I put a piece of content out. And it's also from that framework and understanding who I'm speaking to largely, which are very much people that are just like me, maybe just a couple of years behind me on the same journey. Mm-hmm. And so I relate really well to them, because most of my audience is between 35 to 55. And they're looking at this first half of life's been pretty good, but if I don't make some changes, the second half of life that I'm staring down the road at here, it looks like it's gonna be really hard. Mm-hmm. And so they're ready to make changes, but they just don't know how to start. And so, for me, it wasn't so much about balance, because to be honest, the more I tried to balance things, the more frustrating it became, because, you focus on one thing, you can't focus on this over here. And we had started, ultimately after a couple of years, we decided, I wrote a book, and, I transitioned out of my last company. We went traveling, we took the kids out of school. And I had no idea what the hell I was doing, mm-hmm. And, but I was having fun. I was getting some cool little campaign work. I was doing some speaking, there was some coaching happening. It was all stuff that made me feel really good.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out how to harmonize my personal life and my professional life to make them much more integrated, but also feeling like I wasn't over investing in one and not the other. Because we all know if we put a lot into our personal life, sometimes it might detract from our business and our business performance, et cetera, depending on how you've set things up, and vice versa. We go all in on our businesses and all those hours go there and all the attention. Well, what energy do we have left for our personal life? And so for me, it's like, how do you harmonize these better rather than trying to balance? Because balance, there's always going to be something out of whack. But if you can get them both working much more effectively together, like a symphony with all these different sounds, yet you put them all together, give them a beat, and you got a guy there directed. I mean, it's incredible. You got, 100 pieces, different instruments, and it just creates this beautiful work of art,
Right,
and so that's what I strive to do with a lot of the things I do, is just how do I create more harmony? And that's a really systems, good point. Man, systems and operations and good people.
Yeah. Well, that's it too. It's like where you can't really, in your case, you're not genuine if you're not who you are in your business as you are in your home, right?
Thank you.
A lot of things you're coaching people is like, you got to be genuine that way. And when you're dealing with people and so many people are coming, oh, great job. You're inspiring me. And I have a lot of folks just in my day, hey, I love what you're doing, Brian, or with the business here at Panacea and what we're doing, and our employees. And like, I've always got what I'm doing is I'm always trying to remember who put me where I am, and point at them, right? It's like, awesome. I might have made a good decision and this is working, but I wouldn't have made that decision if it wasn't for that person, or if it wasn't for that advice, or if it wasn't for that book that I read when I was standing on those shoulders, right?
Exactly.
And because there was that time when I was just meandering and wandering and didn't really know, up from down.
I love that, Brian. And I agree with you. It's the people that have assisted us along the way. And I always try to give, credit where credit's due. And I've had some really amazing mentors, both directly and indirectly, like you said, through books, through content, through courses, through masterminds. And I just made a point of just wanting to learn and keep on learning. But the easiest way to learn is also learn from people that have already done it. It's just like,
hey, don't touch that stove. It's hot. I know. I touched it.
Totally. Right. And but it's helped so much, like it's helped give me the clarity, because with clarity, you get confident. And when you get confident, you take more decisive, intentional action, and you stop procrastinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Taking action.
Yeah.
It's funny. I earlier when we were talking a few minutes back, I'd said, I'd love to go back. I'd make some different decisions. And that's true.
Right.
I would, only on one condition. If I could have what I have now.
Yeah.
Still go back, make some different decisions and see what would happen. But I don't want anything to change about what I have now, because I love it.
Yeah.
The good and the bad. You know what I mean?
And there's a nature versus nurture, that constant debate that goes on. And it's both, right? It's our culmination of all that, plus our life experiences, that ultimately make us who we are. But the cool thing is, it's constantly evolving. Buddha said 2,500 years ago, hey, yo, I'm sitting underneath this tree. I just had this great vision, but I know something about the universe I got to share with you. Nothing stays as it is. Everything's changing constantly.
Oh yeah, constantly.
But in the last 100 years, science caught up and said, oh my God, Buddha, he was right. We got nothing but space.
It's so funny because yes, everything changes, but at the same time, nothing's new under the sun.
Correct. Yes.
Isn't that cool?
It is cool. But I think when you really think about that, like your relationship with how change sort of comes in and goes out of your life constantly, it just becomes more, well, I find it easier to accept it, not to be so anti-change. There's been parts of me that were like, wow, I wish I could just lock this moment forever, and nothing would ever change, but it will. And the more you try to hold on to it and not let it change is where we create that opportunity to be disappointed, to get depressed, to really feel poorly about things. But I love your train of thought there. I mean, if you could go back, but know that you would still come to the outcome that you're at right now, great. Awesome.
Years ago, I heard someone speak. His name is Chris Brady, but he did a speech, and he did, what he talked about in front of about 15,000 people was, what if the butterfly effect is completely wrong? He goes, I don't believe it's true. He's like, I believe that no matter what, my destiny was to be with my wife. right? I could go back and have done different things and stepped off the path and done here, but I believe that God put me on this path where he was going to bring me to this person anyway. And I'm like, that's a really cool way to look at it. You know what I mean? To say that I have this vector and I was going to get here anyway. You know what I mean? Because then you're not constantly going back thinking, oh, if I had only done this, if I had only done that. Because you can take advantage of the moment and the moments that come next if you're not constantly thinking, man, if I would have only done this differently, if I would have only asked her to dance at the junior high dance, all these different things, right? And that does you no good.
That's right. And also,
right?
I mean, it's interesting because, you can sort of jump into that predetermination type of thing, right? It's like, wow, it was all predestined, right? It was meant to be. It is what it is, and,
right.
But I mean, I had a moment with my friend last night. We were talking about it and just the same idea, right? It was just like, sometimes you just got to wonder, it's like, how did this happen? Like, I just look at my wife, I look at my kids and I'm like, had I made one decision different, would my life not be here right now? Like with these people,
right.
And it's just remarkable when you really start to unpack that. I know it's mental masturbation, talking philosophy.
Well, and so many things can happen in our lives, whether it's in business, a bad meeting that didn't go the way you wanted to go, you didn't close a deal, whatever, or in life where, example with my wife and I years ago, we had an issue where we had a miscarriage, and it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
It was way harder for my wife because there's so many other things going on there. But it's like, and you start to get to, man, what would that child have turned into? Who would they have been? All the things we would have seen and the birthdays and all that, right? But we've had 2 more children since then.
Yeah.
And what if that child we never got to meet, but we didn't have the ones we have now?
Yes.
And all the magic and all the love and all it's like, so you can't, you learn from your past.
Yes.
You don't want to forget it, but
you
can't dwell and live there and just meander, because those things that you can lose all hope, and a lot of people do. And I pray that people don't, get in, because things can stack up and get really bad. When you lose hope, like you can go, what's the saying? You can go how long without drinking water, how long without eating food, but you can't live another minute once you lose hope,
Yes.
And if people could only hear more and more stories about those terrible things that can happen in people's lives, but if you just dig 3 more feet and you'll find gold. Don't stop, because there's something around the corner, right?
Oh, I love that. I think, Brian, you're saying it so well. And there's gems in what you're saying, but I can also tell there's experience that builds the belief in what you're saying, right?
Oh,
it's
yeah, for sure.
You have to put the reps in,
part of
to
the
really
reason
appreciate
we started this cast is I want to meet people and I want to hear stories, but I want people to hear stories. And that's why I try to dig into those things where people, I used to do this in interviews when I'd interview for jobs, and you'd be talking to the executive and the big boss, and I'd always ask, when I'd get to the point where I get to ask them, tell me about some of your greatest, wins as executive for this company, and they'd tell me, and I always followed up, tell me about the hardest things you ever had to overcome, because I wanted to make sure that the people that I worked with and for were humble enough to tell me about some of their worst situations and how they got through it. Because those are the kind of people I wanted to be around,
That's beautiful. That's how we learn. It's how we grow, right? It's the things that we do when we're knocked down. That's the resilience that usually pulls us up. But resilience, if it's not built up, it's like a muscle. You don't use it, you're going to lose it. It's not just a cliche. It's true. And I find that there's a lot of things that same adage relates to, right? And, as they always say, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And I remind myself of that all the time, because I see myself, like, if I'm perfectly transparent, is there areas that I can improve in? Oh my God, there's lots of them, and it's being very intentional. What am I doing to move the needle in the right direction? And so we have to have that sort of habit around introspecting and being honest and really just asking good questions, but we never stop asking them,
I've got a good question.
Yeah.
You do a lot of these casts, you talk to a lot of people. What's something that you've never really been asked about before that's maybe interesting, or that you've wanted to talk about, but no one's kind of really just hit on?
The funny thing is no one really talks about CrossFit. You know, like,
I think people are scared of it.
Well, they are, but I'm very prolific. I let people know I'm big into CrossFit. I love CrossFit, you know, and it changed when I discovered it in 2007, and I already been in the fitness industry for over a decade at that point. Like, it just completely gave me a paradigm shift in how to train, how to get results, but also what was possible. All
right, let's talk about it then, because I'm super interested in it. Okay, let me grease the wheel a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit of my fitness story, and I want you to tell me, Brian, why the hell are you not doing CrossFit? Okay. So I'm 44 now.
Yeah.
When I was about 29, I was about 240 pounds. I'm 6'2". That's too heavy for me. I should be a little under 200, right? And I noticed it. In my little moment, like that you had when you're in your teens, was that I'm driving. I used to work for the Boy Scouts. I had to do a lot of driving in between counties and meet with volunteers and stuff. I'm driving, I'm hitting bumps. I can feel my belly. Oh, yeah. And it was the first time I ever felt that. And I'm like, that's not good. I don't like that. And then all of a sudden I'm more self-conscious. I can feel, things jiggling back here and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to do something about it. I didn't know what I was going to do something about it, similar to your journey. And then what I like my buddy Chris, who I was talking about before, who we're not too close anymore, he had just recently started this. And it's funny because at night we always talk to each other and we played video games and stuff. And I'm sitting there eating like 12 tacos from Taco Bell in my basement in front of the TV. And I'm talking to him, and he's like, hey man, I gotta go do something. I'm like, what? This is what we do. What do you mean you gotta go do something? He's like, yeah, I'm trying to get back into shape. I just bought this program and I'm gonna go do it. And I'm like, really? Because I'm just having this moment, going on in my mind. I'm like, what is it? He's like, it's called P90X. I'm like, what the heck is that?
Tony Horton.
It sounds weird. And he's like, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's these CDs. I pop them in and it's nuts. And I feel like I'm going to die. And like, I'm not trying to de-edify Chris here, but he wasn't really all that athletic of a dude. Good basketball player, athletic, but body type, not necessarily.
Right.
And I'm like, I'll give it a shot.
Nice.
I'll do it. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, because like Skype was just getting big, back then. I'm like, I'll pop out my laptop. Let's get into a Skype meeting, put the laptop camera in front of the TV. I'll do it with you. So I moved stuff out of my way in the basement. Nice. And it was all push-ups and pull-ups and like 90 minutes of it. And I got done with half of it, 45 minutes. I'm upstairs hugging my toilet because I thought I was going to puke. And I never puked from workouts or anything. And I'm down there. I'm like, sucks, but that was awesome. I'm going to totally keep doing this. And every day, I said, okay, tomorrow we're getting up at 5:30. You got to get up early. We're going to do this. Turn your Skype on. Every day we do it. I set up my garage to start doing it.
So awesome.
And because when I find something that kicks my butt, I'm like, that's going to work.
Yeah.
And so we start every morning, 5:30 in the morning. And it's like he started getting busy because he was building a business, and he would just put his laptop on, pop the CDs in the TV and put it in front of it, and he would go off, get ready for a shower and leave. Wow. And I would be the one doing it. Before I know it, maybe every once in a while he was there. But if he'd forget, I'm like, Chris, you better turn that on, because I didn't have the CDs. Eventually he just gave me the CDs.
Nice.
And I probably went through that 90-day program 6 or 7 times over and over and over. You. I just had it memorized. It got to a point where before he gave me the CDs, I just knew what the workouts were going to be doing every day, and I had them written down in a notebook, and I would just do them. And I got medium, I got strength, and I got endurance results, but I didn't get the look results because I didn't change the food. I wasn't doing any of the diet things. The diet stuff started to happen. But anyway, I got in really good shape, had kids, that changed. I'm in a little bit better shape now. But I've always, and that was a little bit before CrossFit got big, like high intensity interval training was getting big around that time. And then then CrossFit starts coming up, and I see crazy people flipping tires and doing wacky one-handed pull-ups and just getting after it. I'm like, that looks really cool, but I don't have time for that. And before you know it, it goes by. And I've never done a buddy of mine. I think he still does it here locally. So like, how do you get into it? It's intimidating because you got the people in there doing it, and I'm going to be the dude that shows up, and I can keep up with that,
And, I get exactly what you're saying, because I always sort of acknowledge this when I do a lot of foundations classes because I love it. So I do still coach in CrossFit.
Yeah.
And so the foundations type programs is usually just a soft introduction to introduce you to the principles and the movements.
For the soft people like me.
Well, it's not so much soft. When I say soft, it's less intimidating because you get that one-on-one hand holding as you get ready.
Yeah.
So I usually recommend start with a foundational type program, get some one-on-ones just so you break the ice. But you have to understand it's functional movements and they are done at high intensity. And it's constantly varying. And that's really the core definition of CrossFit. But it draws on so many different disciplines. Yeah, we have Olympic weightlifting. Yeah, we have track and gymnastic type elements. Like these three pieces all play together to form these variety of different workouts. But the crazy thing is that you're using so many more muscle groups than most of us are ever used to using. And what I mean by that is I was a gym guy. So I did a lot of the big muscle groups all the time. And every once in a while I did the little accessory stuff. But the main thing was like bench press, squat, deadlifts, like just the very traditional. And it also can get really quite boring, doing the same thing day in, day out for a fixed routine. And so I was kind of hungry for something. I'd also sort of let myself go at that point. So even though I was in the fitness space, I was feeling kind of like an imposter because my body fat percentage got up into the 20 percentile, which wasn't normal for me. Like normally I'm quite active and as a result fairly lean. And so I was having that same sort of experience that you were having sitting in your car, and feeling things jiggle. And I remember selling them a bunch of equipment when they opened the facility. And so there was always this open invitation I could come in and try it.
Okay.
So I went in and I tried the first session. And the owner, Patty, took me through this, whatever they call it, their sort of introduction to CrossFit workout. And so you get one-on-one with the coach and they just take you through these short little workouts, which are more like fitness tests to figure out where you're starting from.
See where you're at, yeah.
There's a picture of me up against a chain link fence, dry heaving.
Yes.
And
I'm getting sweaty just talking about this, Dai. I'm telling you, man.
It was awesome because it was so humbling. Okay, Brian, I thought I was a pretty healthy guy. And there was just this instant shift where I was like, man, it wasn't even that much. I really didn't do that much today in this 40 minutes that we were working together. And I'm absolutely knackered. And in fact, I don't think I've ever challenged myself to that level before. But realize what I was pushing myself to, somebody else that was just getting started that was leaner and a little bit fitter, they would have had a different experience.
Yeah.
But it was equally challenging for the two of us. I might have done a few less reps, but for me, it was just as hard based on my body type, my age, my gender. And so we have to keep in mind that that's the thing. It's highly individualized, even though it is a group program. You're there for yourself. And it's the community that was the piece that really solidified for me. I made some incredible friends. People were there cheering you on. They might finish the workout first, but they'd be coming to cheer on the people that weren't quite done yet. Yeah. And I was like, this is awesome. It's just the camaraderie, you could cut it with a knife. And it was encouraging. There was all these different body types, genders, ethnicities. I was just like, this is where I want to hang out. And so it created this really positive emotional connection, psychological connection, which from a motivation and inspiration standpoint to keep going, especially from an accountability. I mean, if you get all that, just getting up in the morning and showing up is easier. It's just easier. Yeah. And that's what I did. I kept showing up. I've never seen my body, and I hadn't made any commitments to the nutrition change, just like yourself. But just because doing the workouts 4 or 5 days a week, that's like 4 to 5 hours in the gym. You're in and out in an hour in CrossFit. That's the typical. Yep. And within 4 months, my physique completely changed.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's serious work.
Yeah, well,
serious work.
It's fun though. It's like it is a lot of fun. It's constantly changing, and there's all body types. Welcome, and I just encourage people, give it a try. Like don't Google it. Don't watch the documentaries online. Save that for later. Just go in, have an experience, see what you think. But don't base your decision on just going to one. Like you might want to go around to a couple, and. Yeah, it's like I equate it to like Toastmasters, right? Toastmasters is a nonprofit.
Oh yeah,
yep. It's great. It's a great program to help you improve as a speaker, but also as a leadership in leadership skills. And but it is a nonprofit, so it doesn't cost very much. It's also run by volunteers, so there's a certain quality, and each club will be slightly different. And I always say, just go around to a bunch of different ones until you find the one that you feel like you belong in. And that's the same with CrossFit. Don't just join something just sake for joining it. You got to find a place that you feel like you belong.
Right.
And because when you find that, like the likelihood of results happen just by you showing up and developing this new lifestyle because of the association, positive reinforcement, and as well as great coaching, you know? So yeah, it changed my life, man. And now, you know, I've been in it a long time. Like I said, 16 years now. And I love it. I just love it.
Cool. So what's next for you, Dai? You know, what's the next big thing you're eyeing up?
Well, for me, you know, on the professional side, I launched a podcast 11 weeks ago. And that's been a whole new journey for me. I absolutely love it. I'm enjoying the medium. It's called the 2% Solution. It's just based on my book that was published a number of years ago, and just gearing people on how to best use 30 minutes a day to see improvement physically, emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. You know,
check it out. 2% Solution.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, man. And so that's been really fun. That's really what's been my main focus. And then I got a couple other side projects, a couple startups I'm just working with, and but, you know, to be honest, on the personal side, that's what's got me more excited is I'm getting back into doing, you know, Spartan races and Tough Mudders.
Oh, so you're a Spartan guy.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I've been doing it in 2017. I want to get back to doing it again, but it was awesome.
What a fun sport, right?
Like, oh, it was so fun. Like, so it's interesting. I connected with a guy, and so his name is Chris Swanson. He's actually a sheriff in Michigan. He's actually kind of quasi-famous now. He's a neat guy, super high energy guy, super fit dude. Look him up. I think you'll like him. Anyway, he challenged me. He said, Brian, you gotta commit to doing something that you know is going to be hard, but you got to commit. So he's like, what is it? He's like, it's got to be something competitive. It's got to be something you got to get after. I said, I've seen this Spartan thing. I've always wanted to do it. It looks awesome. He's like, okay, so go do it. Go sign up. I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm not ready. He's like, so pick a date and time 6 months out in advance. That's plenty of time. You're not in that bad of shape, and buy the ticket. Do it. Commit. Because if you don't, you won't. You'll let yourself slough off. Like, oh, because it's not crazy cheap. It's not crazy expensive. Not crazy cheap. No. I'm like, okay. So I found one. It was a state where I had to travel to get there. Yeah. It was in Michigan. I was in Wisconsin, so I had to go under the lake. And yeah, I found a training program online for the Super Spartan, the 9 to 11 mile one. Yeah. Because I wasn't ready for the beast. I didn't think I was going to attack that one, but I didn't want to do the baby one. I'm like, I'm going that one. And yeah, I trained for 6 months, and just, it was awesome. And then it's crazy. I remember I cramped up. I hate drinking water and stuff while I'm and I'm a sprinter by nature, so I was never a long distance runner. I ran cross country once so my buddies would play football on the team because they were cross country guys. So I ran cross country. It sucked. Yeah. But so I don't like the feeling of being full of water. So I didn't drink almost the whole time doing this race. And at the last mile, I started to cramp up going up and down all these stairs. And then it was brutal at the end. I finished and I'm like up on my toes walking around, you know, but the next day I just felt this huge amount of fatigue. It was for a month I felt fatigued from that race, but it was cool.
That's amazing though. What a great experience, right? I mean, it completely shapes your perspective, you know, just on what's possible with your body, you know, and mind.
Talk about a cool group of people too. Like the vibe there at the event was awesome. I had my wife and my kids there with me, and they were a lot younger then, but the music is playing and they're dancing around and everybody's like, you know, fired up or exhausted at the same time. But you felt inspired and everybody was like positive. It was just good. It was a cool vibe.
That's the exact same vibe I get with CrossFit communities, you know? And so I like to remind people, because I think the two are very complementary. You know, it's like you do all this stuff in the gym, but it's nice to have something that you can do outside, you know, some sort of event-based, something that you have to train for. It gives you a little bit more intention with your showing up at the gym every day. And so I always like to have sort of that as my carrot for myself, you know, to keep me focused and accountable, really. Yeah. And, but it's just a fun thing to do.
How many Spartans have you done?
I think I've done 6 or 7 Spartans now.
That's cool.
And I've done 6 Tough Mudders. So, yeah. You know, they're both different. I mean, it's funny now, they're owned by the same company now, but,
are they really? I didn't know that.
So Tough Mudder, I guess when, during COVID, it hit some, let's just say they ran into some challenges. So Spartan acquired them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's 2 in the one.
I got a buddy in church and he's a Tough Mudder guy. He does them all the time. And
I played Spartan now.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And, but I do like Spartans. because I like that they offer 5, 10, and then obviously the super, which is the beast. That's the equivalent. The beast is the equivalent distance is usually what a Tough Mudder is.
Okay.
So distance wise, but I like the fact that you can have the sprint, you can have the 10K.
Yep.
So just for people that are a bit more intimidated, because Tough Mudder is a big commitment. It's a half marathon. So, but it's very team orientated. That's the thing I love about Tough Mudder. It's all about the team. That's
different than the Spartan.
Correct. Yeah. Spartan's more individualistic. Even though you can still do it in teams, it's still all about what's your time. Like it's still, they want you to crush it, and so there is a little bit of nuance between the two, but I like both. It depends on how I'm feeling. Like if I'm bringing a big team, we had a team of just over 80 people come up with us to do the Whistler one. And it was, I had a guy that was, a guy that had been in recovery from heroin for 20 years, with in his 60s, a bit overweight, and he has a prosthetic leg, and he was out there crushing it. And then we have guys down in like an 18-year-old marathoner, right, that just crushed it. And so it was neat to see this huge variety of people, but all coming together to support each other and have fun and experience something, and that's the stuff that gets me most excited in life, is just seeing all these different cross sections of people in different stages of life and how they can come together for one thing and just have a shared experience. I just think it's just awesome. It's
absolutely
makes me feel good about the world.
I bought throwing knives. I bought broomsticks and twine, and I created my own spears for that event because I didn't want to botch the spear event.
Don't want to do the burpees.
So I didn't want to do the burpees.
Yeah.
And I almost did the whole thing with no burpees.
Whoa, good for you.
The part that I didn't make is one of the last things I had to do was the rope climb.
Rope climb, yeah. It's a lot of technique for the rope climb because it gets so muddy and wet, right? So it's like if you don't have technique, it's hard. Yeah.
And I got 3/4 of the way and my arms started to cramp up in my hands, got G.I. Joe grip, and it's slid right down and off to the burpees.
Yep.
Burpees of shame.
You only have to do one set of burpees. That's pretty darn good, though. That really
was my
good.
goal, and the training the whole time is I knew if you got to stop to do the burpees a lot, that's going to kill your time. So, but anyway,
that's great, man. I love it. So that's pretty much it, man. Right now, that's the stuff that's got me most excited. And then, it's just showing up for people. I really get a lot of value in that and helping men with just experiencing a little bit more clarity in life.
So I saw you. Are you still doing the Motivation Monday stuff? I saw some stuff online.
Yeah. So we put a bit of a pause because there's somebody else that's doing the online stuff. I'm just about to start up in person again, but that's how it initially started when we were living in Bali. Like we had this regular men's group that would meet every Monday. Yeah. And we called it Mentorship Mondays. And so I'm just getting one started again here in Vancouver because unfortunately COVID just sort of threw a lot of that out. And I was just sick and tired of doing stuff on Zoom, to be honest with you, especially during COVID. So I was like, I can't. I had to let something go. And so I stopped doing the men's groups online. But I am excited to get back to that.
Cool. That sounded pretty neat. So anybody watching, go look that up. What was it again? It was
Mentorship Mondays. But if you look up my TEDx talk, Why Vulnerability is a Human Thing, or just look up Dai Manuel TED, there's the story there, how that all came to be. But I also talk about the story about the alcohol, my wife asking me the question. So if people want a bit more, that will go a little bit deeper for them.
Awesome. Well, they should look into what you're doing because it's awesome. Let's end on this. What's kind of the coolest thing on a high note? What's one of the neatest stories that you've come across? Maybe people that you've got to spend some time with that you think would be fun to share with that maybe you've never shared before. Like people like just that have had some opportunities to meet, or like actual. I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be somebody famous, or maybe somebody that we would not even know, but it's like, wow, this was a really cool thing that happened, or maybe it was something that would be surprise us about somebody that we have heard of.
Well, I mean, I've met some neat people. Like I remember I was traveling a couple times, and I like to do the CrossFit Open every year, which is sort of this global competition. I won't get into it, but even when I'm traveling, if I can't do it, the home workout at my home gym where I train, I'm going to go and do it at another club. And so I was in LA and I went to Bricks CrossFit in Hollywood, and they needed to pair me up with the judge, and I turn around and it's Bob Harper. Biggest Loser, Bob Harper. And I was like, you're Bob Harper. I was like total fanboying, because I was I appreciate what he did for the personal training industry, especially. I mean, I know there's some conflicting opinions, and I have some very strong opinions about Biggest Loser. I don't endorse what they were doing, but I appreciate him and what he did for personal training, being a really positive face and brand for it. And so it was just neat being able to interact with him directly. And he was there judging me for that 20-minute workout, So that was actually really cool. It was just a fun experience. And it reminded me why, I love that kind of a community, but also it was fun, It was just a really neat experience.
I don't want to get back down that again. So I didn't know this about that. So in those kind of competitions, you have one-to-one judges judging your performance?
Yes.
To make sure you're doing them the right way or you're not cheating or something?
Yeah. Well, it's because they have standards of movement. And so they want to make sure that everyone's at least honoring the same standard, because they're going to compare your score globally to everybody else.
Okay.
So this is the preliminary.
That's the goalpost. That's the playing field, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I love it because as a 45 plus guy now, in that sort of what they call the master's class, I can see how do I compare to other guys between 45 to 49 around the world. They're doing the same workout that same week, and I can just compare. I can just see how do I measure up comparatively to the rest of the CrossFitting community that's in the 45 to 49 class. And so I really like that because it gives me a better understanding of my own benchmarks and what's possible for me. Like there's guys and I'm like, oh man, how do those guys do that? And it just inspires me to see some of these other guys just crushing it, and it keeps me going.
What's the toughest event, or what's the toughest, thing you have to do in CrossFit? What's the thing you dread the most?
I a lot of the gymnastics, I'm in 215, 6'1", so I got a bit of weight on my bones, and gymnastic movements, especially.
So you got to have some muscle mass there. Yeah.
Oh, I got lots of muscle mass, and but the rings are tough. Like for me, like I could do them, but I have to exert a lot of energy to do it.
Okay.
So, and handstand walking, I'm okay at it, but not great at it. So
that's handstand walking is one of the things. Wow.
Yeah. Well, as you get more advanced, they start to just make things a bit more challenging for you,
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, all right, bud, this has been great. I wish we had a lot more time. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you, Brian.
I think you got a lot to offer. Not just obviously our fan base that we're trying to grow here, but you're doing great things. I can't wait to see what you're up to next.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I love what you're putting out in the world. Honestly, these conversations being captured and then shared. And, I always appreciate being a fly on the wall for some of these types of conversations. And the fact that you put the time and energy and the resources to produce this kind of content. I mean, I just look at media nowadays and you can't help but just see all the negative.
Oh, yeah.
To see people doing something purposefully to offset the negative scale to something more positive. I think we need more of this. So thanks for just being a good role model, but also a great example, man.
Appreciate that, bud. Thanks, man. All right, dude. Dai, have a great one.
Thanks,
Keep it up, man.
Thanks, Brian.